She stormed onto my porch like she owned the place, pointing her finger straight at my face. "You need to pack up now," she snapped. "This cabin belongs to the HOA for weekend guests." I froze for a second, holding my coffee mug tighter. "This is my land. My deed says so," I told her calmly, but she laughed, like I'd cracked a joke. "You think paperwork matters here? I run this neighborhood. My guests are arriving tonight, and I need this cabin cleared before sundown." She waved a paper in my face, some fake-looking HOA notice with bold red letters saying, "Eviction." My stomach twisted. She wasn't just bossy, she was dangerous with her fake authority. I could see two men behind her, dragging a cooler and folding chairs, like they were setting up camp already. "Lady, you can't do this," I warned. But she smirked, pulled out her phone, and dialed. Loud enough for me to hear, she said, "Yes, 911, we have a trespasser refusing to leave HOA property. Send officers now." She looked at me with a cruel grin, whispering, "You're going to jail today." But what she didn't know was that the call she made was about to flip her entire plan upside down. Within minutes, I heard the sound of sirens cutting through the quiet lake air. Karen straightened her blazer, fixed her hair, and stood proudly at the end of my driveway as if she had orchestrated a parade in her honor. Two police cruisers pulled up, lights flashing. The officers stepped out, hands resting near their belts. Karen rushed over to them before they could even ask a question. "Officers, that man is trespassing in our HOA cabin. He refused to leave, and he threatened me." I raised my eyebrows, stunned at how easily lies slipped off her tongue. One officer turned his gaze toward me. "Sir, can you step forward? We need to check your ID." Karen folded her arms, smirking. "Don't bother. He's lying about owning this place. I'm the president here." I reached into my jacket slowly and pulled out a leather folder. My hands didn't shake. I'd been through worse than this. I handed the officer my license, then flipped open the other side of the folder, revealing a golden badge. "Actually, officer," I said firmly, "this is my private property, and I also happen to be a county deputy." The silence that followed was heavier than the lake breeze. Karen's smirk melted off her face, her eyes darting between my badge and the officer's. She tried to recover, stammering, He's faking it! That can't be real!" But the officers weren't looking at me anymore. Their attention locked on her. One asked sharply, "Ma'am, did you just file a false emergency report?" Her face went pale. Karen stumbled back a step, her voice cracking as she tried to defend herself. I didn't file anything false. He's squatting here, and I was just protecting the community." The taller officer narrowed his eyes. "Community property? Ma'am, this is a private cabin, and his ownership papers are on record. We can pull them up right now." I stayed quiet, letting her dig her own grave. My silence made her nervous. She kept talking faster, like a cornered animal. "You don't understand. I'm the HOA president. I have the authority to reassign cabins for official use. My guests are coming tonight, and this man is blocking HOA rights." The second officer exchanged a look with me, then asked flatly, "So you admit you tried to evict the legal owner with a fake notice?" Karen's hands shook as she clutched her phone. Her eyes darted toward the two men who had carried chairs earlier. They were slowly backing away, trying not to get dragged into her mess. I finally spoke, calm but sharp. "You called 911 to throw me out of my own home? You wasted police time. That's a crime." Her voice cracked louder now, panic spilling out. "You can't arrest me. I'm the president of this HOA." That's when the taller officer stepped forward, reaching for his cuffs. "Ma'am, being an HOA president doesn't put you above the law." Click. The sound of handcuffs snapped around her wrists. And for the first time since she barged onto my porch, Karen had no words left. Karen struggled against the cuffs, her voice turning shrill. This is a mistake! You don't know who my guests are! They're already on their way! The officers ignored her pleas, guiding her toward the cruiser, but just then, headlights cut through the trees. A black SUV rolled down the gravel path, stopping right in front of my cabin. The men in suits who stepped out didn't look like weekend vacationers. They looked official. Karen's face lit up with desperate hope. "See, that's them! They'll clear everything up!" she cried. But the moment the men walked over, her smile shattered. The taller one flashed his ID, not at me, not at her, but at the officers. Federal Property Crimes Division. We've been tracking reports of fraudulent HOA scams in this county, and it looks like we just found our president. Karen froze, her mouth opening and closing like she couldn't breathe. One of the officers whistled low. So this wasn't just about a cabin? I folded my arms, finally stepping closer. Told you she wasn't just pushy, she was running a whole racket. The federal agent nodded at me, then turned to Karen. "Ma'am, you're under investigation for multiple counts of fraud, harassment, and misuse of authority." Karen's knees buckled, and for the first time, the so-called queen of the HOA looked small, really small. And as they loaded her into the back of the cruiser, I couldn't help but think this was only the beginning of what would unravel about her schemes. As Karen sat in the cruiser, red and blue lights flashing across her pale face, the federal agents didn't waste a second. One of them turned to me. "Sir, we'll need access to your porch camera and any other security footage. We have reason to believe this wasn't her first stunt." I nodded, unlocking my phone and pulling up the feed. She's been here 3 times this month, trying to pull the same eviction trick. I kept every recording. The agent took one look at the videos, Karen posting fake notices, screaming at me to leave, even trying to jiggle my door lock, and his jaw tightened. This lines up with complaints from 3 other homeowners. Looks like her entire board might be in on this. Karen suddenly leaned forward against the cruiser window, shouting, "You don't know what you're dealing with! The whole HOA agreed with me. Every single one of them. They'll back me up." The taller officer chuckled under his breath. "Ma'am, you just admitted on record your board is involved." I felt a twist of satisfaction in my chest. For weeks, neighbors whispered about missing HOA funds, surprise fines, and people mysteriously losing access to their own property. Now, the truth was bleeding out right in front of me. The agent smirked and clapped me on the shoulder. "You may have just helped us crack open one of the biggest HOA fraud cases in the county." Karen banged her head against the glass, screaming, "This isn't over! You'll regret this!" But she was wrong. For the first time in months, I knew this was the beginning of the end for her entire empire. 2 days later, the lake community buzzed like never before. Word spread fast. Karen, the mighty HOA president, was sitting in county jail while investigators combed through HOA bank accounts. But the real storm hadn't even started. That evening, I was on my porch when a convoy of cars pulled up near the clubhouse. Men and women in business suits hurried out, board members looking frantic. They gathered in a tight circle, whispering, their faces pale. I quietly set my phone on record, walking closer. One of them hissed, "She was supposed to take the fall alone. Now the feds will trace everything back to us. What about the slush fund?" Another snapped, "Keep your voice down. If the members find out we stole their dues, we're finished." I stepped out of the shadows. Too late for whispers. They spun around, eyes wide. One of the older men sneered. "You again? You think you're some kind of hero? You're just a cabin squatter who got lucky." I cut him off, flipping open my badge again. "Wrong. I'm the one who's been working with federal investigators for months, building a case against your little operation." Their jaws dropped. Silence hung heavy, broken only by the crickets chirping near the lake. Then one woman cursed under her breath and bolted toward her car. But 2 federal agents stepped out of the darkness and blocked her path. The rest of the board froze, realizing the trap had closed. For the first time, the people who acted like kings and queens of the neighborhood looked exactly what they were: cornered criminals. The very next morning, the entire neighborhood was called to an emergency meeting at the clubhouse. Federal agents stood at the front,
a projector humming as it lit up the wall with bank statements, fake invoices, and surveillance clips. Gasps filled the room when Karen's face appeared on screen, shoving phony eviction notices onto doors. Then the documents rolled in. Hundreds of thousands of dollars siphoned from HOA dues, rerouted into personal expenses, vacations, shopping sprees, even a down payment on a private boat. Neighbors who once bowed to Karen's orders now shouted in outrage. "She fined me $500 for having a flower pot," one man cried, "and she used it for a trip to Vegas?" The agents let the fury build, then revealed the final piece, a signed confession from one of the weaker board members who cracked the night before. Every scheme, every scam, they named Karen and her board as the masterminds. All eyes turned to me. The very people who once looked at me like an outsider now clapped me on the back, thanking me. One elderly veteran even saluted. "Son, you protected our homes when nobody else would." For a moment, I felt my throat tighten. I wasn't just fighting for my own cabin. I had fought for everyone's right to feel safe in their own home. I looked around the room and said, steady and loud, "This land, these houses, they don't belong to a corrupt HOA. They belong to the people who built their lives here. No one has the right to take that away." The room erupted in applause. Even the federal agent beside me cracked a smile. Meanwhile, Karen's voice echoed faintly from the holding cell in the back of the clubhouse. "This isn't fair! I built this community!" But now the community finally saw the truth, and they were free.
Weeks later, the lake finally felt like a place of peace again. Kids fished off the dock without someone threatening to fine their parents. Families grilled on their porches without harassment over unauthorized smoke. For the first time in years, laughter replaced fear. Karen and her crooked board, they weren't coming back anytime soon. With charges of fraud, harassment, and embezzlement stacked high, they faced years behind bars. Their empire of control had crumbled overnight. One evening, as the sun sunk low and painted the water gold, I sat on my porch with a cup of coffee. A neighbor walked over with his daughter, smiling wide. "We wanted to thank you," he said. "You didn't just save your cabin, you saved all of us." His little girl held out a small drawing of the lake with an American flag above it. I took it carefully, and for the first time in a long while, I felt the weight lift off my shoulders. I looked at the flag she drew, then out at the land I fought to protect, and said quietly, "I didn't fight for this country just to let bullies like her take it away. This land means freedom, and freedom stays with the people." The lake breeze carried my words across the water, and in that moment I knew Karen's reign was over, justice was served, and this cabin, my cabin, would remain a place where no one could ever take our rights again.